Hi friends, in magnetic materials we are discussing about the classification of various types of magnetic materials. In that, now we are looking at understanding the approach related to ferromagnetic materials. The concept of understanding ferromagnetic materials is also known as Weis theory. Now, in this type of ferromagnetic materials, the magnetic moments are predominantly due to spin magnetic moments of electrons. These electrons will be aligned parallel to each other to the maximum extent. Now, this we can explain in the form of a diagram. Consider a ferromagnetic specimen. When there is no field, the atoms with magnetic moments are aligned randomly. But interestingly, when a magnetic field is applied, immediately these magnetic moments of the atoms align in its field direction, exhibiting large net magnetic moments along the direction of the field applied. That means it allows large number of magnetic lines to pass through it. Because large number of magnetic lines are passing through it, then naturally its relative permeability is much greater than 1. So the intensity of magnetization, M, what we call, and susceptibility, both are very large and positive. So the magnetic susceptibility varies with temperature as per Curie-Weiss law. What is that law? Psi is equal to C by T plus or minus Tc. Tc is the Curie temperature. Now there are different cases in this. Suppose if you take the first case in this law, when T is much less than Tc, when T is much less than Tc, then what will happen to psi? Psi is high and positive. So this corresponds to a ferromagnetic material. Suppose T is, this is case 1. When T is greater than Tc, then automatically psi is low and positive. Then this implies its behavior is paramagnetic behavior. That is very interesting. In this law, when the temperature is less than the Curie temperature, psi is high and it is positive, therefore it corresponds to ferromagnetic material. When T is much greater than Curie temperature, psi becomes low and positive, therefore it corresponds to a paramagnetic behavior. Now if you take the case 2, T is less than Tc, already psi is positive we taken. Suppose psi is negative, then this corresponds to diamagnetic behavior, where T greater than Tc, psi is positive, this corresponds to either paramagnetic or ferromagnetic material. That means the entire behavior depends on the value of psi. So we can see the variation of susceptibility with temperature in the form of a graph. Now when you depict variation of susceptibility with temperature in the form of a graph by taking absolute temperature on x-axis and susceptibility on y-axis, you will get a curve like this. Now from this curve we have to interpret some important features. So try to understand the interpretation I am making based on this graph. If you observe this graph, a ferromagnetic material exhibits spontaneous magnetization. That is, even in the absence of a magnetic field, it exhibits magnetization. And a ferromagnetic material exhibits hysteresis also. So these features can be explained based on Weis molecular field theory, which is also known as domain theory. According to Weis molecular field theory, the material surface consists of small regions known as domains. So within the domain, due to interaction between the moments, all the magnetic moments will be aligned parallel. So in the weak magnetic field, the growth of favorable domain and shrinkage of unfavorable domains takes place, and in the high field, the magnetic moments align parallel to the field. This is what is to be understood as important features of ferromagnetic substances when you study the variation of susceptibility with temperature in the form of a graph. Now, let us look at another classified magnetic material known as antiferromagnetic materials. So these are materials with anti-parallel magnetic moments, that is spin magnetic moments, like this. These type of substances are antiferromagnetic materials. For example, if you take the oxides of nickel, chromium, ferrous, etc. These are all examples for antiferromagnetic materials. Now, if you see the variation of susceptibility with respect to temperature using Curie-Weiss law. What is the Curie-Weiss law? Psi is equal to C by T plus Tc, where C is the Curie constant and Tc is the Curie temperature. Now you can see this in the form of a graph. Take temperature on x-axis, susceptibility on y-axis. So it will vary like this. Now psi increases gradually with temperature and attains a maximum value. This maximum value, the temperature here, is denoted as Tn. What is Tn? This is called Néel temperature. Hence it is denoted as Tn. If you observe this graph, I am again explaining. The susceptibility value increases gradually with temperature and attains a maximum value at Néel temperature and then decreases with increase in temperature. Understood? So let us understand in a different way. Now we shall try to understand this graph related to variation of temperature with susceptibility like this. For example, consider an antiferromagnetic cubic material, a body-centered unit cubic cell of antiferromagnetic material. It consists of two different atoms, let us say A and B, with anti-parallel magnetic moments. When its temperature is increased, the magnetic moments of A and B get disturbed. If the disturbance is in clockwise or anti-clockwise directions, the magnetic moments will be aligned in the same direction. So therefore, the susceptibility increases and maximum temperature is reached, which is known as Néel temperature. The attaining maximum value of a temperature is what is known as Néel temperature. Further, if you increase the temperature, so further increase of temperature naturally disturbs the alignment of magnetic moments in the same direction. So thus, susceptibility decreases when temperature is greater than the Néel temperature. This is what we have to understand about antiferromagnetic material. Now look at ferrimagnetic materials. These are the representation of alignment of magnetic moments. Now it appears they are anti-parallel, but see the sizes here. So different magnitudes are there for this. So the materials that have anti-parallel magnetic moments of different magnitudes aligned like this. Such type of materials are ferrimagnetic materials. Now you can show the alignment like this. They are aligned anti-parallel, but dimensions are different. So they have different magnitudes. That is what is to be understood. Now, for example, if you take some materials, for example, ferrites, some complex oxides, XeFe2O4. What is X? X can be manganese, X can be magnesium, X can be cupric, X can be nickel, X can be cobalt, X can be zinc. So you can have MnFe2O4, you can have MgFe2O4, you can have CuFe2O4, or you can have NiFe2O4 or CoFe2O4 or ZnFe2O4. These are all complex oxides of these metals. These are all examples of ferrimagnetic materials. Now if you see the variation of susceptibility with temperature, as usual we'll take temperature in absolute scale on x-axis and susceptibility on y-axis. The variation looks similar. Now this temperature is the Curie temperature, maximum. That means same formula, Curie-Weiss law, psi is equal to C by T plus or minus Tc. C is the Curie constant as usual and Tc is the Curie temperature. This is how ferrimagnetic substances are classified. So we have broadly categorized all the substances of magnetic materials into different varieties such as diamagnetic substances, paramagnetic substances, ferromagnetic substances, anti-ferromagnetic substances, and ferrimagnetic substances. This is what we have to understand. So the next thing we will focus on understanding is what is known as, very interesting feature for a magnetic material, known as hysteresis. So let us understand this. Take a ferromagnetic specimen and keep that specimen in a magnetic field. Okay? Then the specimen is magnetized by induction. Now when it is induced by that magnetic field, then the magnetic intensity value H varies with flux density. B is flux density, H is magnetic intensity. So when the specimen of ferromagnetic material is placed in a magnetic field and the specimen is magnetized by induction, because the magnetic intensity H varies, the flux density B also varies, but not varies linearly. That is very important. So here B does not vary linearly. So there is a curve that is coming. That is what is known as hysteresis loop. So B does not vary linearly with H. Linearly with H. Let us understand this process in the form of a diagram. Let us see the nonlinear variation of flux density with intensity of magnetization. This we are taking on this axis and B on this axis. What is O? O is point that represents an initially unmagnetized specimen, and that means zero magnetic intensity. Originally it is here. Okay, when you increase intensity, B also increases but not uniformly. So therefore, when you are increasing H, B also increases like that. Right? And reaches, let us say, a point A. So that is what we are trying to represent. As H is increased, B also increases non-uniformly, rather non-linearly, and reaches a point A. Understood? Now, on the other side, if you decrease H now, B also decreases, but a different path is followed. Now, second step is decrease H. That implies B also decreases. That means when you increase H, B is increased. When you decrease H, B should naturally supposed to decrease like this. No, it won't decrease like this. When you decrease H, B decreases like this. So let us say B is following, when H is decreased, B is following the path of AB. So decrease of H, B also decreases, but not uniformly. That is very important. So rather it follows the path AB. So it follows the path AB. When H becomes 0, B still has a value OB. That means when you decrease H, B follows this path AB. The moment H becomes 0, B still has a value of OB left over. Understood or not? So that is what I am trying to represent. When H is equal to 0, that means you can understand this in a different way. This is the initial point. Intensity of magnetization is increased, flux density also increases, but non-linearly, like this, reaches a maximum point. From there, if you decrease the intensity of magnetization field, instead of following the same path in decreasing mode, flux density follows a different path. That is, it follows the path of AB. That means B always lags behind H. That is what we have to understand. That means when H becomes 0, B still has a value equal to OB. So this is what we have to understand. This implies B lags H. That means when H becomes 0, B still has a value equal to OB. Intensity of magnetization is 0, but flux density is not 0. It is lagging. So this magnetic flux density remaining in the specimen in the absence of external field is what is called residual magnetism. I am repeating. We started with a specimen being initially kept in an unmagnetized stage at O. We gradually increased the intensity of magnetization. Due to increase of intensity of magnetization, flux density also increases. So it follows this path, not linear. Non-linearly it followed. It reaches a maximum point, say at A. That means now when you decrease H, instead of coming down like this, flux density follows this path. That means when H is decreasing, B is following the path AB. That means B is always lagging H. That means when you make intensity of magnetization to 0, B cannot be 0 because B still has a value of lagging behind value of OB left over. Understood? That means what? That means the magnetic flux density remaining in the specimen, even in the absence of external electric field, is what is called residual magnetism. So thus, the magnetic flux density remaining in the specimen in the absence of any external field is what is known as residual magnetism. And this power of retaining this magnetism is what is known as retentivity or remanence. So what does it mean? When originally at unmagnetized stage, when the specimen is at O, when H is increased, flux density B is also increasing. It reaches a maximum value A. When you start reducing the value of H, instead of following this curve, B is following this curve. AB is the path it is following. That means B always is lagging H. So even the field intensity value becomes 0, B cannot be 0 because still it has a value to follow. That is, OB is the additional lagging value. So therefore, even in the absence of intensity of magnetization field, still there is a residual magnetism left over in the. That means this specimen has got residual magnetism. That is what I mean by saying the magnetic flux density remaining in the specimen in the absence of any external field is what is known as residual magnetism, and the power of retaining this magnetism is what is known as retentivity or remanence of the specimen. So therefore, thus the retentivity B of a specimen is a measure of magnetic flux remaining in the specimen when the magnetizing force, that is the magnetic intensity, is removed. Now, further increase the value of H in the reverse direction, this side. B also decreases. B also decreases. The value of V further decreases, still lagging behind H, and becomes 0 when H has a value equal to OC. So this value of magnetic intensity is called coercive force or coercivity of the specimen. Understood? Again I am repeating. Instead of this side, you go on increasing intensity of magnetization in the increasing order on the reverse direction. B also decreases and reaches here. Decreases, still lagging behind H, and becomes 0 when H has a value equal to OC. So this value of the magnetic intensity is what is called coercive force or coercivity of the specimen. So coercivity is what is critical value, that is what is basically known as. So this is what we can represent as critical value. Critical coercive intensity, what we represent is, this value is represented as coercivity. Right? That is what I am going to write now. Here you see the magnetic intensity H is now further increased in the reverse direction. So the value of B also further decreases, still lagging behind H, and becomes 0 when H has a value equal to OC. So this value of H, that is magnetic intensity, is what is called, I told you, coercive force or coercivity of the specimen. So what is this coercivity value? We represent as HC. This HC is a measure of magnet. That means the residual magnetism, earlier it was here, is destroyed now. So therefore HC is nothing but the measure of magnetic intensity required to destroy the residual magnetism of the specimen. Understood? That is what we have written here. We started increasing in the H value in the reverse direction. B started decreasing, still lagging behind H, and B can become 0 only when H has equivalent value to OC. So that value of magnetic field intensity is called coercive force or coercivity of the specimen, which is represented as HC in the diagram. So where it is able to destroy the residual magnetism situated earlier. So therefore Hc is the measure of magnetic intensity required to destroy the residual magnetism. Now if we increase H value beyond OC, the specimen is increasingly magnetized in the opposite direction, and a point, let us say, maximum reached D. So this is increasing H value beyond OC, and the specimen is increasingly magnetized in the opposite direction and reaches a point D. Now you take back the H from its negative value through 0 to its original positive maximum value. You will get similar curve following this path. That means if you take the H value from negative through 0 to its maximum value, it follows the curve. Let us say this point is E, this point is F, and reaches this curve. That is, this DEFA is nothing but by taking intensity of magnetization value back from its negative value, negative maximum value through 0 to its original position, positive maximum value. A similar curve DEFA is obtained at points B and E, where the specimen is magnetized. These 2 points, in the absence of external magnetic intensity, it is said to be, between these 2 points, it is said to be permanent magnet. Remember this. Between these 2 points B and E, where the specimen is magnetized in the absence of external field, any external magnetic intensity, it is said to be permanent magnet. So this is what is to be understood. On this side it is minus Hc, this side it is plus Hc. Here this point, for example, you have residual magnetic field, plus side. So here also you will have negative side residual. That means between the points B and E only, this is said to be permanent magnet. This is what is to be kept in mind. So let us briefly analyze this and interpret. Now it started here, gradually decreased, reaches a negative maximum. From negative maximum, you have taken back to positive maximum via 0. So at points B and E only, the specimen is magnetized in the absence of external magnetic field. Therefore, intensity is said to be permanent magnet. Now it is, you can say that always the flux density lags behind the intensity. So lagging of B behind H is what is known as hysteresis. Lagging of B behind H is what is known as hysteresis. The closed curve you are observing, A, B, C, D, E, F, A. The closed curve A, B, C, D, D, E, F, A, which represents cycle of magnetization of a specimen, is what is known as hysteresis curve or hysteresis loop of the specimen. Based on the area of hysteresis loop, ferromagnetic materials are classified into hard and soft magnetic materials. So I am just briefly summarizing for you. If you see the diagram, originally it is unmagnetized, zero magnetic intensity, H is increased, B also increased, not uniformly, and reached a point A, and there, now if we decrease H value, B also decreases, but it follows the path AB. That means B is lagging behind H. When H becomes 0, B still has a value equal to OB. So this magnetic flux density remaining in the specimen in the absence of any external field is what is called, defined as residual magnetism. So the power of retaining this magnetism is called retentivity or remanence of the specimen. So for retentivity B of a specimen is a measure of magnetic flux remaining in the specimen when the magnetic force is removed. Now if you further increase it in the reverse direction, the value of B further decreases, still lagging behind H, and becomes 0 when H has a value equal to OC. This value of magnetic intensity is called coercive force or coercivity of the specimen, represented as SC. So this is a measure of magnetic intensity required to destroy the residual magnetism. Now as H is increased beyond OC, the specimen is increasingly magnetized in the opposite direction and reached a point such as D here. Now by taking H back from its negative maximum value through 0 to its maximum original positive value, a similar curve DEFA is obtained. So at points B and E, where the specimen is magnetized in the absence of any external magnetic intensity, it is said to be a permanent magnet. So it is thus therefore found that the flux density B always lags behind the magnetic intensity H. So the lagging of B behind H is what is called hysteresis. This closed curve, what we call as A, B, C, D, E, F, A, that is representing a cycle of magnetization of the specimen, is what is known as hysteresis curve or hysteresis loop of the specimen. Based on this area of hysteresis loop, ferromagnetic materials can be classified into hard and soft magnetic materials. That we shall take it up in the next session.